damage calculation formula. Second, removing resistance from PvP. Third, grouping synergy multipliers. And fourth, improving the system to enhance a sense of equipment growth. First is refining the damage calculation formula. We started by clarifying the basic terminology, specifically for evasion or accuracy and evasion. They were often displayed as accuracy rate, evasion rate, causing confusion. Now, these will be unified as accuracy and evasion with a 1% to 4-point conversion rate. This change should prevent any further confusion with mixed terminology. Additionally, all accuracy effects attached to each class's skills will now be removed. Currently, each class receives different accuracy effects for each skill based on their unique characteristics. Because of this, balancing has been difficult. And there have been certainly cases where things felt unfair depending on the situation. So we plan to remove all accuracy rate attached to individual skills and instead add in accuracy plus 18 per skill to Infinite Mastery, a common passive skill for all characters.
Now this might be a bit confusing, so to give you an example, currently this is the Hashishun skill Inquisition. This skill has a stat that increases accuracy rate by 19% and a buff that increases all accuracy rate plus 6% for 10 seconds when using the skill. Such effects that come with the skill itself will be removed going forward, and accuracy will instead be added to a common passive skill, Infinite Mastery. Please do note that accuracy effects on class-specific passive skills will remain the same. This way, every class will be able to use more diverse combos without being limited by skills that increase accuracy rate. Next is about the damage reduction rate of super armor. Am I a bit fast? I am a bit fast. This time I'm a bit fast. Sorry, Chip. Can't get it right. Can't get it right. PvP players may already know this, but other adventurers might find this unfamiliar. The damage reduction rate have been applied as a multiplicative stat so far, but since it applies differently from various buffs in the game, we are changing it to an additive calculation for unification and intuitiveness. Just changing the formula like this would diminish the efficiency of skills that increase damage reduction rate. So, we'll be adjusting the damage reduction rates of these skills, along with the formula. We are sharing this as they are changes being made, but we'll make sure that it doesn't feel any different from before. Next is on extra damage to species. We wish to clearly distinguish how it's applied in PvP and PvE. For example, extra damage to humans will no longer activate when you fight with another adventurer in PvP, and will only activate against humanoid monsters. Instead, the effect that applies to another character in PvP will be replaced with a new one called extra damage to characters. This will reduce confusion by clearly distinguishing PvE and PvE. PvE and PvP. With this change, you might be worried about the items with extra damage to humans. This patch will also add the same amount of extra damage to characters to all items that already have the extra damage to humans effect. Existing items will be updated in this way, and going forward will make appropriate use of extra damage to characters in various ways. There'll be some changes to extra damage to species itself. First, the extra damage to species will no longer exceed the AP limit for monster zones. In other words, it will not go over the soft cap. We're preparing a comprehensive rework to ensure that the difficulty and efficiency of monster zones are balanced with these changes. There are also additional changes in store, so stay tuned for them too. Next, on to the summons. From now on, the damage calculation formula for summoned entities will be the same as for your character. The summons will now also benefit from your character's damage effects, as well as any damage increasing effects that occur in certain situations. On the other hand, extra damage to species will no longer ignore the target damage reduction, and stats will now be applied to summons in the same way as they are to characters. not monsters. As I gave an explanation about extra damage to species earlier, please keep in mind that summons will now be affected by extra damage to characters, not monsters. And something many adventurers have talked about, the fact that summons get stronger at night will be removed. Summons have always played a significant role in many skills in Black Desert. And it took longer than we anticipated with how much work was needed. I'm personally happy that we're finally able to tidy things up. We'll pay close attention until the end. Ensure these updates do not cause issues with balance. Okay.
Those are some fundamental changes.
Yeah. So, I'm now going to go over some of the PvP resistances.
Moving on to second key area, removing PvP resistances. Going forward, resistances quite literally will no longer apply in PvP. There are a few things to consider with this change. First, effects related to resistances is so-called 3 minutes buffs or in passive effects will be replaced with other effects that suit characteristics. However, they will still be applied in PvE, so any resistance increases attached to skill will remain. One of the biggest concerns we had when removing resistances from PvP was grapple. With grapple resistance gone, grapple skills will become significantly more powerful, and classes with ranged grapple skills could become disproportionately strong compared to those with melee grapple. We plan to address this making distinguishable ranged grapple animations, for example a wind-up animation when attempting a ranged grapple, and the speed and the style of these animations will play a key role in balancing. Melee grapples will also go through some adjustments. We'll put our best efforts into making this change, and it could be done in a different way in the future as we consider various other methods while we prepare this change.
Oh.
That's nice. The wind-up is nice. Like, that's definitely going to be more telegraphed, it seems. Okay.
Additionally, the grapple resistance is not used against monsters either, so the effect will be removed entirely. Items that currently increase or ignore grapple resistance will be converted to silver with the patch to be received by the adventurers.
Nice.
So,
Okay, next.
Next up, grouping synergy multipliers. Screen, please.
this I think is so it's kind of split into 3 different things.
Yeah.
So as you can see on the screen, synergy multipliers of classes will be applied in 3 different groups depending on the characteristics of each class. If you look at Ranger, you'll notice that Succession and Awakening are placed in different groups. Succession Ranger uses a ranged weapon, and Awakening primarily uses melee skills. Like this, as classes have different playstyles between Succession and Awakening, making them more appropriate for different groups. We'll also carefully review each class to see if there are any areas that are lacking or need improvement until the patch goes live. So this is kind of a change on the class damage modifiers.
Right.
There's one more important thing. We have decided to block mouse movement with this update as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Mouse movement has been a feature since the very beginning, and many adventurers have become accustomed to it, which is why we've kept it in the game. But over time, it began to affect the balance of the game as it started to become a deciding factor in adventurer's skill level. So along with the aforementioned changes, we're taking this opportunity to fully disable mouse movement. We understand that adventurers who use this feature see mouse movement as part of the character's balance, and that they could take the removal of the feature as a nerf or debuff to their character. Please note that we'll all be also making the appropriate improvements in its place.
Yeah. So this may have been very sudden for some, because it's not something that was mentioned last year. But as Wansu explained, there were many problems with it, and some structural issues that needed to be fixed. Mouse movement forcibly changes a character's movement mid-animation, which directly leads to issues such as desynchronization, where the screen you see is not identical to the screen other players see. That's why we decided that blocking mouse movement will lead to a more enjoyable experience for everyone, as well as resolve the desync issue. We'll prepare this change thoroughly so we can provide better PvP and a more stable combat environment. I mean, yeah, I think people have all seen the videos. Now, for the last key area, improving the sense of growth. Going forward, if your AP is above 310, you'll gain +5 extra AP against monsters for every point of AP. Of course, these are still under tests for balance adjustments, so the numerical values may change. But up until now, while gear performance have always been important, once you reached a certain AP threshold, you likely noticed that the impact of further increases felt much less significant. This was intended to reduce the pressure of gear upgrades, but as time passed, we decided it's time for an improvement. For this, we're reworking the overall PvE system, including monster zones, to resolve this issue and create a better environment for everyone. Previously, monster zones had an unclear AP limit or soft cap, had inconsistent hunting efficiency, and some classes were even able to perform in higher level monster zones with lower AP. So, we first reassigned the AP requirement of all monster zones with care. Our goal is to clearly outline the required specs step by step, and to create a system where falling below the AP requirement significantly reduces your efficiency, while meeting the requirement provides clear rewards. We especially want you to really feel the result of increasing AP throughout this process. That's why, as a part of this monster zone overhaul, we've designed the AP limits or soft caps in a much more systemic way. If your AP goes above the requirement of a monster zone, your efficiency there will not increase sharply. Instead, as your AP increases, you'll get better loot and experience a clear sense of growth by moving to a higher level monster zone. So you have no reason to stay in the same zone. Since this patch means meeting the AP requirement is essential for efficient hunting, we will reduce situations where monsters deal unexpectedly powerful attacks that can instantly incapacitate adventurers, in other words, preventing getting one-shot. Next, let's talk about DP. At this time, we don't have any additional plans for DP bonuses. We are still thinking over this, however. Since Black Desert is a field-based game, we want to leave some room for adventurers to make up for lower DP with their own skills. Our philosophy is that while AP has to be met, DP is something that can be overcome with skill. But instead, DP will be a set minimum requirement for challenge-based objectives, not regular fields, so open world monster zones, guys. In other words, instance dungeon content, if you don't meet the minimum DP, you won't be able to enter these types of content. That way, DP will still be a meaningful stat for those who work towards it. And it allows us to design the content to not be overwhelmingly difficult. Following this, boss blitz content such as Black Shrine or Ataraxian will have their AP and DP requirements adjusted. Like the monster zones, we plan to gradually ease the difficulty of content that felt too challenging. To summarize, moving forward, the efficiency of field monster zones will be designed around AP, while instance dungeon content like bosses will require adventurers to meet both AP and DP requirements. This will be our philosophy in redesigning all monster zones and content. It will be a lot of changes, but we'll try our best to ensure no part of this feels like a nerf. And this new approach is reflected in the upcoming new region, Edania. Now that wraps up the introduction to the relevant changes
A little
with so
fast.
many updates. Oh, we're not going into that part yet.
관련 내용에 대한 소개는 여기까지입니다.
Go ahead, chap. My bad.
너무 많은
So as I was saying, this wraps up, and I know a lot of you might feel a bit confused, but at the same time, we hope there are people who see the positive side of bringing more structure and improvement, no matter how late it might feel. We too have our concerns about changing existing system. It's not the act of changing itself that worries us, but rather how these changes will affect our adventurers, you guys, how you might feel about it. Having love for this game, playing every day for years, and seeing it suddenly change could definitely make you feel a sense of loss or disappointment. Even so, we believe that the changes we've shared are essential for Black Desert to move forward and build a better future. We'll be putting all our efforts in, and we hope you'll continue to support us. There's a lot included in these updates, so we won't roll everything out at once.
Yeah.
Starting from July, so from next week, the updates will be gradually introduced on the Black Desert Lab, where they will be tested and refined for about a month. We're aiming to end. We're aiming for the end of July for the live service updates, and we'll do our best for it.
You went a little ahead of him, but it's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But it is a lot, and I think for a lot
it's
of
a lot.
adventures, it's a lot of big fundamental changes.
Yeah.
But it's kind of needed to make
Right.
future stuff better, basically.
Yeah. A lot of this is 100% needed.